Wasabi guys, Void here coming back at y'all with another Commander deck tech video. This time we're going to be looking at Reaper King from Shadowmoor. This guy is just disgusting looking. He looks like one of those album covers for those 90s death metal bands. Really cool though, one of those out there Commander options that not many people talk about, but it's very much a thing. It's 5 color, it is all tribal, based around the Scarecrow creature type. And there's some synergies with the artifacts, and the fact that a lot of the Scarecrows are also artifacts is a cool thing as well. But just for reference, the converted mana cost of this creature is 10 mana, so even though you can pay as little as 5 mana the first time you cast him, he is always going to be CMC 10, and you can obviously pay from the range of 10 generic mana to 5 mana, one of each individual color, and you can obviously pay any variation of generic mana and colored mana. It's going to be optimal if you pay the least amount of mana for it though, so mana fixing is important. You want to pay only 5 mana to cast it the first time. Setup is very important with this deck. Other Scarecrow creatures you control get +1/+1. In Anthem, that's probably the least impressive thing about him, but it's still something, I guess. And whenever another Scarecrow comes into play under your control, you destroy a target permanent. Which, this is really the most intimidating thing about Reaper King, is that once you get a good setup going, you only really need some good copy effects, ETB triggers, things like that going, where you can get a ton of them out there, and then just destroy permanent after permanent. And this can also hit land bases, so if you have enough of a presence, if you can rapid fire just bring them out there, you can wipe out someone's entire land base and keep them from getting back into games. And there are a lot of good combos associated with copying Reaper King and getting a ton of ETB triggers off of that alone. So pretty cool, getting as much removal as we possibly can and focusing on Scarecrows. As far as the land base goes, nothing super special, but we do have a Cascading Cataracts to go along with lands that are going to be producing pretty much all the mana that we need. Cascading Cataracts is unique though, because if we're desperate and if we have a ton of colorless mana, we could just filter it into there and get the mana that we need to cast Reaper King the first time. I think that's pretty cool. It's also indestructible. Academy Ruins is going to be good for our artifacts. If we want to have our artifacts come back so we can recast them, have them enter the battlefield all over again, that's another cool interaction there, because a lot of the Scarecrows in our deck are going to be artifact creatures, so it's far from the worst thing that we can have as far as lands go. We also play an Inventor Sphere. Again, a lot of Scarecrows are artifacts, so we should be able to trigger this Metalcraft-like restriction in the activated ability, where we have to have at least 3 artifacts in order to sacrifice it, and basically tutor up an artifact card. Now onto our artifacts. We have Sensei's Divining Top, Soul Ring, good staples. Even in a deck that cares about getting all these different colors of mana, Soul Ring is never really a bad thing. Blade of Selves is honestly one of the main inspirations for wanting to build this deck. I just did an in-depth review of this card and going over the different interactions. Reaper King was definitely one that caught my eye. So a big reason why I'm making Reaper King the deck is because of Blade of Selves. I think it's a very cool card, not just for Reaper King, but there are some other good creatures in the format that you can fool around with. Then we have Felwar Stone, going to get us hopefully all 5 colors that we need. Not always going to work out to where you get all 5 colors, but you should be able to get at least 3 or 4 from your opponent's land bases. So a good mana rock, can't really beat it. Lightning Greaves. Reaper King is usually a pretty big target. Unfortunately, I had to cut out Swiftfoot Boots because a lot of good cards within 5 colors that you could include into this type of deck. And if you have to make sacrifices sometimes Swiftfoot Boots isn't the most optimal selection. Lightning Greaves is obviously better. Chromatic Lantern, gonna be the ultimate mana fixing type of card. 3 mana, taps for 1 mana of any color, that's cool. But our lands also tap to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, so gonna have just about all the different mana that we need in order to cast our Reaper King, which is perfect. Coalition Relic is kind of like the other 3-drop mana rocks that are going to tap to add 1 mana of any color, but definitely going to add to our mana fixing Commander Sphere. Going to give us the option of sacrificing it to draw a card. Going to get us all 5 mana that we need. Darksteel Ingot, same thing, but is also indestructible, which is one of the biggest underrated cards I would have to say when it comes to mana rocks. Just having an indestructible mana rock, it's invaluable. It taps for whatever mana you need. It's perfect. Herald's Horn, gonna give us some cost reduction for our Scarecrows. It's also going to give us a pretty cool upkeep trigger where we get to add a card from the top of our deck to our hand if it's a Scarecrow. So good consistency never hurts a deck. Mimic Vat is fantastic. This deck is all about the ETBs with Scarecrows, so if you can get this imprinted a Scarecrow on it, sometimes it's risky, but you could do it with Reaper King, have him die, exile him with the imprint. But you want to use this on your weaker Scarecrows, obviously. Some of your other Changelings that are going to be considered Scarecrows too. That's pretty cool. Panharmonicon, again, all about ETBs. Doubling the amount of triggers that you get is going to be just insane in this type of deck. There are a ton of ways to abuse that even further. Panharmonicon is just a great setup card. Conjurer's Closet, again, good ETBs. Get to do it at the beginning of our end step. And we're going to exile another one of our Scarecrows. That way we can destroy another target permanent. Really good card. That's sort of the gist of this deck if you don't already get it. We want to get a ton of removal. That's all what the deck is about. And then eventually we can just overwhelm our opponents from that point. Then we go on to our creatures. We have Heap Doll, just a 1 mana, 1/1 artifact creature Scarecrow. Pretty weak, but it just sits on the field. Whenever we need to, we can sacrifice it to remove a target card from the graveyard. Whatever opponents might be trying to get back, if they have to target it before they actually get it back, we can, in response, exile that card. So it's a great bit of hate if we want to use that. Not the best way to hate on our opponent's graveyards, but it's something, and it's a 1 mana way to destroy a target permanent with Reaper King out on the field. So that's pretty devastating. Moth Dust Changeling, another 1-drop, 1/1. Changelings are considered every creature type, so that includes when they are in your hand, in the graveyard. Whatever zone they happen to be in, they're considered Scarecrows, so that's pretty cool. So it's going to trigger Reaper King. Moth Dust has an activated ability where we can tap an untapped creature we control to have it gain flying until end of turn. So not the most efficient way to deal combat damage or anything like that. It is just a 1/1. Could be a 2/2 with Reaper King, but mainly in here for the cheap converted mana cost. Metallic Mimic enters the battlefield. We choose a creature type, and then it has the chosen type in addition to its other types, so it is going to be entering the battlefield. That's going to then trigger, and then all the other ETB effects are going to trigger on the stack, and then it's going to resolve. That way you get the Scarecrow entering the battlefield. You get to destroy another permanent. I think that's pretty cool. And also gets +1/+1 counters on our other Scarecrows that are entering the battlefield. Phantasmal Image. Nothing super special. Just another 2 mana. For all intents and purposes, this is going to be yet another Scarecrow. Pretty cheap. Especially if we have a really good one out there. We get to then copy it. It is susceptible to a lot of removal, but it is there. Pilipala. Probably going to take it out. Not really good in this deck at all. Just a 1/1 flyer for 2 mana. Not really special. No real combos in the deck. At least I don't think there is. I mean, we do have the Moth Dust Changeling that can tap it if it's untapped, and then we can pay 2 mana and basically filter Soul Ring mana, I guess. But other than that, it is pretty weak. We have Shape Sharer, 2 mana, 1/1 Changeling. We can pay 3 mana and have it become a copy of target creature until our next turn. So, a little bit of utility there. I wouldn't say it's something like a Mirage Mirror, but depending on what creatures are on the board, it's sometimes useful to get some good attack triggers, damage triggers, whatever we need from other creatures, good keywords even. Mirror Entity is one of the better Changelings, and for good reason. Awesome activated ability. If we have a ton of mana, we just want to fill it into X, and until end of turn, creatures we control have base power and toughness XX, and gain all creature types. So if we have a lot of those Scarecrows out there earlier on, late game, they're going to put in a lot more work with Mirror Entity. It's going to be pretty nice. Moon Glove Changeling. Nothing super special. Yet again, another Changeling, another Scarecrow. Has an activated ability where it can pay 1 black and have it gain Death Touch until end of turn. These are pretty underrated. Good blockers, good attackers. Whenever we feel like it, we can get rid of a good creature in combat. I think that's pretty cool. We have Scarecrow, one of the better Scarecrow creatures in the deck. We can sacrifice it for 1 generic and draw a card, which, you know, I guess it's something. But the more important part is that we can pay 4 mana and tap it to return target artifact creature card from our graveyard to play, which is essential for this deck. We want to get more Scarecrow ETBs. This is an easy way to do it. Bring them back from our graveyard. I think that is pretty cool. We have Scuttle Mutt, basically the mana dork Scarecrow for the deck. We can also tap it to have target creature become the color or colors of our choice until end of turn. So if there's an effect where scarecrows are dependent on the color of another creature you control, you can definitely then fix it that way. So pretty cool utility, and there are some cards where that matters. Torian Mauler, basically the Mana Gorge or Hydra of the deck. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Another Changeling. Wildfield Scarecrow, sort of like the Yavimaya Elder of Scarecrows. This is a little bit worse, obviously. Has Defender, a 1/4, so isn't going to do too much, but we can pay 2 mana and sacrifice it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards, and then we get to put them into our hand. So I think it's pretty good in a 5-color deck. Getting 2 different basic lands is never a bad thing. Wing Rattle Scarecrow has flying as long as we control a blue creature, and has persist as long as we control a black creature. Persist is pretty disgusting in this type of deck. If it happens to die, it comes back. We get another trigger for Reaper King. That is pretty cool, and we should have no problem meeting both of those conditions because Reaper King is all 5 colors. Chameleon Colossus, another Changeling. This is a green one. Has protection from black and an activated ability where we can pump it up where X is its power. So it's going to get an Anthem from Reaper King, so it should be a 5/5. Pay 4 mana, give it +5/+5. That could sometimes be relevant. Let's say our opponents are playing a mono black deck. We have Changeling Berserker, 4 mana red Changeling with haste, and it champions a creature. So any creature we want to, we can champion it, which basically means we have to sacrifice it unless we remove another creature we control from the game. But when Changeling Berserker leaves the battlefield, we can then return that card that we championed it back into play. So another cool way that we can get some Scarecrow ETB triggers for Reaper King while also getting the Changeling entering the battlefield at the same time. I think that's pretty cool. We have Master Transmuter. Again, a lot of these Scarecrows are artifact creatures, so having a way to also dodge some removal at the same time. We can bounce our Master Transmuter, or we could bounce our Reaper King to dodge removal there. At the same time, we could also make it easier for us to get more Scarecrow ETB triggers. I think that is fantastic. Padim, Console of Innovation. Once we have Reaper King out there, we pretty much should have the highest CMC artifact on the field, so we should get that card draw during our upkeep. It also gives our artifacts hexproof, which that's not too shabby either. Phyrexian Metamorph, another artifact creature that's going to basically just clone and whatever Scarecrow we feel like cloning, and then getting those Scarecrow ETB triggers at the same time. Or you could just use it for good utility, copy an artifact, and get some good value there. Shell Skulkin, for an activated ability of 3 mana, we can have target blue creature gain Shroud until end of turn. So a Reaper King is, surprise, surprise, going to be the main target of this because it's likely going to be hated on more than any other card in our deck. So why not give it some sort of protection while also having a Scarecrow enter the battlefield there. Solemn Simulacrum, not a Scarecrow, but good value in a 5-color deck. It's colorless, so doesn't really depend too much on our mana base being as flexible to cast it, so gonna be an easy way to get some advantage there. Watchwing Scarecrow has vigilance if we control a white creature, has flying if we control a blue creature, so nothing super special, but a good value creature, good keywords. Might be something I consider taking out for the future, but for now I think it's good enough to stay. Antler Skulkin. This one is really cool because we can pay the activated ability of 2 mana and have target white creature gain persist until end of turn, which is a good way to ensure that even if our opponents are capable of killing Reaper King, we can just have it come back. So I think that is a pretty cool interaction there. Cairn Wanderer, another cool Changeling. This is one of those creatures where it just basically gains a ton of good keywords dependent on how many creatures are in the graveyard with those same keywords. So one of those intimidating creatures that can get out of hand. Pretty cool that it's also a Scarecrow. Changeling Hero, another one of those champion a creature cards where we can then again take advantage of the Scarecrow ETBs, getting more triggers that we can then destroy more permanents. Also has lifelink, so a little bit of good value there. Changeling Titan, another good one that also champions a creature. This one's pretty good value though, 5 mana for a 7/7. No other keywords, but still a good way to take advantage of the triggers nevertheless. Jedi Navigator, pretty much an auto-include in this type of deck. Basically, just soul bonding this to another one of your Scarecrows means that for 2 mana, you can pretty much just destroy a permanent. Yet again proves why Jedi Navigator is one of the most powerful cards in the format. Progenitor Mimic, another one of those disgusting cards that you can pair up with Reaper King or your other Scarecrows, and then then just get more ETB triggers. Destroying more permanents during your upkeep is pretty funny. And then we wrap up our creatures with a Rattle Blaze Scarecrow. Has persist as long as we control a black creature, and has haste as long as we control a red creature. So persist creatures, pair them up with Reaper King, and you get more ETBs. Pretty cool. We have 6 enchantments. We have Prismatic Omen. All of our lands are every basic land type in addition to their other types, which is pretty cool. Awesome mana fixing. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually ramp us up any, but still pretty good. Rhystic Study, good value, good card draw. Gonna make you an even bigger target at the table, but who really cares? The card draw is worth it. Call to the Kindred is a fantastic aura that we can equip to either Reaper King or our Changelings or our Scarecrows, whatever we want to, and get more Scarecrows off the top of our deck. We get to look at the top 5 cards. We get to put a creature card that shares a creature type with the enchanted creature from among them onto the battlefield, and then we put the rest on the bottom of our library. A pretty awesome way to get even more Scarecrow ETB triggers so that we can destroy even more permanents. It's a pretty cool card. We also have Mechanized Production because it's basically like the same thing, but only it's going to be guaranteed. We do have to enchant an artifact, so kind of have to have a Scarecrow and not just a Changeling that's going to be considered a Scarecrow. That's the only condition, but it shouldn't be too hard. Another way that we can get even more ETB triggers, but this is also a pretty cool win con, because if we have 8 or more of the artifact with the same name, we win the game. That's pretty funny. And with Kindred Discovery, good value. This is a tribal deck technically. All we have to do is just choose Scarecrow, and then every single time a Scarecrow enters the battlefield or attacks, we get to draw a card, which is just insane value in this type of deck. Mirari's Wake, 5-color decks absolutely love this card because it doesn't really matter what land you tap, it's going to double that mana, and also give your creatures a 1/1 Anthem. Pretty good valuable enchantments that are going to make the deck a little bit more consistent. We do have 8 sorceries. We have Demonic Tutor, going to get us whatever combo piece we need. A lot of good ones, a lot of good interactions in this deck, a lot of cool cards that you might want to search up. Farseek, going to get us whatever land we need, whether it's a plains, island, swamp, mountain, or forest, and then we get to put it onto the battlefield tapped. So we have a lot of different lands to choose from there. Rampant Growth, kind of the same thing, just not as flexible. We don't get to go search up shocks or anything like that. We of course have Cultivate and Kodama's Reach because we play some basic lands in here. It's definitely worth playing them because Cultivate and Kodama's are 2 of the best cards in the format. Playing both of them in a 5-color deck is never a bad idea. We also play Explosive Vegetation, 4 mana to get up to 2 basic land cards onto the battlefield tapped from our library. This is going to help us ramp up and also get some more mana fixing at the same time. And then we have 2 cards that are pretty disgusting. Rite of Replication and Kindred Charge. Rite is just so devastating. We pay the kicker cost. We get 5 copies of Reaper King, and we get a whole bunch of these triggers because they all see themselves entering the battlefield at the same time. So you're going to get 5 triggers off the original Reaper King, and then you're going to get 4 triggers for each Reaper King that's entering the battlefield because they trigger for whenever another Scarecrow enters the battlefield. So it's going to be 4 times 5, so that's 20 plus 5. You should end up with, if I'm not mistaken, about 25 triggers for Scarecrows entering the battlefield and being able to destroy 25 permanents. I think that's pretty cool. And Kindred Charge is pretty disgusting as well. We choose a creature type, and for each creature we control of the chosen type, we create a token that's a copy of that creature, and they gain haste and we exile them at the beginning of the next end step. But who really cares? If we have 5 creatures that are all Scarecrows, we have Reaper King out there. I mean, we're getting 5 more creatures, we're getting 5 more destroy target permanents. That is just mean. Fantastic cards for this type of deck. I really can't say enough about them. Then we move on to our instants. We have 7 of them. Gonna kind of pick up the pieces here when it comes to removal, consistency, Swords to Plowshares, because sometimes being able to destroy a permanent isn't good enough. We want to exile the creature, so we have some exiling removal to lean on. Vampiric Tutor, gonna get us whatever piece we need to finish the game. I think that's pretty good. Cyclonic Rift, can't really play a good blue deck and not even consider Cyclonic Rift with, so it's in here. Again, we can't always deal with stuff by destroying it. Cackling Counterpart, instant speed, getting a token copy of a target creature we control is pretty nasty. We can also flash it back, so we have the advantage of timing, getting destroy permanents. That's basically what this card should just read. Crib Swap is pretty flavorful. We could use this defensively, exile one of our creatures. We get a 1/1 shapeshifter creature token with Changeling, so it's going to enter the battlefield as a Scarecrow, or we could just use it straight up as removal for one of our opponent's creatures, exiling that creature, and then giving them a 1/1 little shapeshifter. Either way, it's a good card, pretty versatile for this type of deck. Eerie Interlude and Ghostway are both pretty much the same card. I would say Eerie Interlude is a little bit better because you don't have to exile all of your creatures, so if you have creature tokens, you're not forced to basically just get rid of them. But they're both going to basically do the same exact thing and get you even more Scarecrow ETBs, which again, might as well just read instant speed removal for 3 mana because that's what the card basically is. But anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I think it is just hilarious. I've seen a friend of mine play this before. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I always wanted to make this deck, try to see if I could make it even better, maybe optimize it in the future. I definitely want to do that, but it was always one of those commander decks that's always kind of intrigued me. Reaper King is very weird, very out there, not something you see a lot of in the commander format. 5-color commanders aren't usually the most popular, but they definitely grab the most attention. And there's so many different angles you can go with. You don't necessarily have to just go with straight up Scarecrow Tribal, play as many different Scarecrows as you can. You can try to focus on throwing some other creatures in there and using some cards that basically change creature types on the battlefield, because there are some that are like that, some different variants that I decided not to go that route. I wanted to stick with actual changelings, scarecrows, things that are going to enter the battlefield on their own as Scarecrow, so I don't have to rely on other permanents doing that for me. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to leave any suggestions. As always, you all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all in next video.